Okay, this is the final panel of our NGA Let's Get Ready Las Vegas initiative. We have some field trips, which are going to be exciting, of course, as well. But we want to start here with the idea of assessment. You're all familiar with College Board, whether you know it or not, because most of you probably either took the SAT or an AP course. That was very much them, is very much them, but they are not constrained by their history. They certainly still do those, but there's a lot more they're working on about assessment and credentialing. They were founded 120 years ago. David doesn't look 120 years old, but they're really not only a part of where we've been, but as David will articulate, a part of where we hope to go. Innovation can truly reshape the way we think about credentialing and measuring what students are ready for, when they're ready for it, in a way that higher ed and employers value, that means something to families and the learner themselves. What excites me about this conversation is the way the College Board is also using a treasure trove of data that it gets to point us towards opportunities to really redesign the experience of schooling itself, expand and replicate what works, change what doesn't work. So welcome, David. Thanks for joining our discussion, and we look forward to what you have to say.
Thanks a million. Did you want to start with questions? Just dive in.
I think dive in a little bit on kind of what you're doing. By the way, we have a few more seats, I think, here. If some folks from the rafters, it looks like 2 seats, 1 seat here. Somebody, I'm going to call out names if you don't take them. Jen Walmer, take Angie's seat. Gordon, come on up here, take this seat here. Lachelle, come on, we got Governor Cox's contingent, take one of those. And then the fellow who's with Saul Khan, tell me your name again. Yeah, come on up here, join us. Take Michael Sullivan's seat. I feel like a teacher here, right? Like, come on, class, come on, here we go. And go ahead, David, as people take their seats.
I've known a lot of you for a long time, so let's return to the blunt chat of our time together. And so interrupt me, ask me questions. I know the governor will ask me questions, but any of you have a thought, just throw it out. Let's make this a little more lively and conversational, because some very bright people are here who I admire. I'd love to hear from you. In a word, I think the College Board has to transform, because we've done a decent job at providing opportunities for, call it, the top 30% of high school students, and we have left behind a vast middle of the American high school that is bored out of its gosh darn mind. For most students, they do not see advanced placement as a great opportunity. They see it as the advanced serving of something they did not enjoy in the first place. When we look at our data, like assessment data, the thing it does not see is perhaps the most important thing, which is all of you know what a kid looks like when they take a test and they're not trying. They don't look like much. In other words, if we cannot engage young people, we cannot see what they can do. So we are trying to redesign everything we're doing, and I'll go through as much as you'd like, around the SAT or PSAT to make it much more relevant in forceful ways to the full range of young people who interact with it, not just those going to a first 4-year college as their first step, but perhaps most consequentially, changing the invitation of what courses we offer. The classic high school curriculum is middle school once more with feeling. What's in middle school? 6th, 7th, and 8th grade English. Welcome to 9, 10, 11, and 12. US history, but yet once more we shall return to world history now, to biology. And kids are already done. They're not with us. If we cannot transform the core of the high school, not through electives, but the central courses students take, to immediately meet them at what fascinates them, their ambition, we will continue to lose the vast middle of the American high school. That is our total focus right now. So I'd like to tell you a little bit about, or I'll pause for questions, is how we're changing coursework to try to fascinate a generation of young people.
Go for it.
Keep going? And I hope that I've been self-critical enough, because all of us have to listen to what is tedious. As an example, all of us could agree that all students should learn economics, and that it is a source of power, because economics is the science of scarcity. It is literally understanding scarcity to distribute scarce resources. But if you look at our data set as to who takes AP Macro and Micro, it's overall flat but declining in those students we might most want represented. It's declining in rural America. It's declining among Black Americans. It's in decline. What should we do? My first 10 years in this job, I thought I could shake my finger kindly at students and advocate for them to learn these skills that they should learn for their success. They did not listen to every indirect metric. What do these students want to do, though? They all want to study business. 80% of students want to be entrepreneurs. Why don't we have an AP business course with a focus on entrepreneurship that is simultaneously a standalone course in personal finance? Because what we have everywhere in this country is personal finance requirements that get you, forgive me, absolutely nowhere. Whereas a business personal finance credential would be extremely valuable for youth apprenticeship programs in areas like banking, hospitality, everywhere, where that working knowledge would advantage young people in doing a job. So with College Board, instead of just thinking about college credit, which we will always think about, so in all these courses I'll describe to you, there is a college credit opportunity. Sometimes at community colleges or regional publics, not necessarily at the most elite schools that we are associated with most of all. But always a college credit, but at the same time, an employer credential that is clearly valued. They will all have projects at their center where students make tangible choices to address their fascinations. The way we learned the power of this was we shook things up. We had a course called AP Seminar, which was designed for like the fanciest kids. It was built on what elite private schools do, which is they have seminars in which kids choose what they want to study. We found it was most effective, so we put it in 11th and 12th grades for the most advanced students. That's we thought was the best idea. It was most powerful in 10th grade as a replacement for that 10th grade English course, where all of a sudden the middle kids who were bored out of their minds pick topics that they want to research and engage in. This course evaluates you on the classic work-ready skills of your work habits independently, of your ability to collaborate in teams, and to present and share your findings. It is our largest pass rate, the lowest gap between different kinds of students, and it predicts your success in future AP courses. So it isn't just that it's easy, it's a springboard to further work. But students get more fascinated because they get a chance to research what they do, what they're interested in doing. We're launching a course in AP cybersecurity. I'll give you guys another thing we all have to face, which is this. 25 states have computer science requirements, and I know some of you labored hard to pass those requirements. I think the governor from Wyoming was talking about how we keep adding them. Can I just be like super frank in this small room? When you add a high school requirement to kids, something they must pass to pass go, to graduate from high school, they will take the easiest version that gets them out of that requirement and nothing is gained. This is what's happening in required computer science and required personal finance around this country. Instead, what about a course that gives them a credential that is meaningful to get employment and a college credit at the same time? And in AP cybersecurity, we have a situation where the dearth of needed students to get these courses is huge. There's huge unmet need, and kids are fascinated by it because you get to break things and protect them, which is fascinating. In these two courses, business and cybersecurity, we're obsessed with their relevance in rural America. As you may know, farmers are being held hostage in cybersecurity terms because they break into their networks to mess up the crop rotations and hence hold them hostage. In rural hospitals, in the business course, it looks at the trades. So you'd think that business may have nothing to do if you want to be a carpenter, if you want to be a trucker. No, sir. Because if you want to be a trucker or a plumber, you better be able to run your own business or someone else is going to take your profits from you. So we're trying to design these courses in a way that are evidently valuable for teachers, for kids, for their employment prospects. I'll say one last thing. If career education is going to change at scale, two things must be true that are not true today, because we venture into this with all humility, learning from people like Stephen at SREB and others who are here. We look at a career technical environment where the number of valuable credentials kids get is cryingly small. In the great state of Indiana, one of the most career-forward states in the area of cybersecurity, guess how many kids get a credential honored by employers? About 10,000 per grade if you're interested. And how many do you think? Do you want to guess? Play a game with me, come on. 35? That's the Colorado number. Indiana's 17. Think about that.
We're twice Indiana.
You're twice Indiana.
All right.
I said it here.
I like having a low bar.
But you see, isn't that crazy with all the talk about investing? Like, because there's the Microsoft Word credential, which makes no sense, or there's CompTIA that's way too advanced. It's after years of industry.
I'm not going to even ask the Utah number.
Yeah, so what we want to do with you, to tell you, is a multi-state credential appropriate for high school students in cybersecurity, endorsed by the military, endorsed by companies everywhere, that is highly valuable. that fills that gap. It's a national security issue. There's a huge glaring hole in practical credentials for young people. So that's thing one. Thing two is the teacher problem. If we keep avoiding this teacher problem, we might as well skip it, because duh, cybersecurity is valuable, but duh, no teachers know it, so here we are. We have a 500 school pilot for our cybersecurity course. We have already tapped out the cybersecurity K-12 teaching profession in this country to staff that course alone. So what are we going to do about that? It is, to me, quite simple, and someone said it, I think it was Shanika earlier, about having the courage to have teachers learn alongside their students. In our AP Computer Science Principles course, which hundreds of thousands of kids take, half the teaching force is from outside of computer science. If we had waited for them to be certified by universities, it would have taken us another lifetime, another 125 years. Instead, what we did is we granted, as the College Board, a waiver to teach our course. You're not expert in computer science, but you are sufficiently expert in the Computer Science Principles course through a summer immersion. There are daily resources for students in that course. So you have resource to draw upon. There's an expert, since the course is the same everywhere, that you can draw on for free. Those teachers who teach that course are just as effective as the teachers from the computer science background. My aim, what my nonprofit should invest in over the next several years, is tens of thousands of teachers to learn new skills by teaching new courses, learning business and personal finance by teaching it, immersing them, giving daily resources and tools for kids. That is basically what I want to challenge the governors here with, which is to transform the number of useful credentials young people are receiving so that high school is what it should be, which is a prelude to not just getting a diploma, but exciting work that fascinates young people and gets them a job.
So getting to kind of this relevance agenda, it's relevant for the learner, but also for the private sector, for the employer. I mean, the two go hand in hand. The learner wants it to be relevant beyond their ego and meaningful. So how are these conversations going? Are they going? And what needs to occur with the private sector when you and we have some of the folks in the private sector here too, when you say, hey, what is it you need and how do we show it and how do we do more of that?
Basically, it's a game of match, you win. Does it fascinate young people now and for their future, and do employers really need it? And when you have that dual condition, then you can move forward. The only problem is all the structures are against you. Then you face a world of stupid presenting you from making that match. So I'll give you one match just as an example. So in cybersecurity, it's evident that young people are fascinated by this, but we have the teacher problem and we don't have a credential that meets them. So as much as the College Board wants to be involved, we want to help the ecosystem thrive by developing a great credential for high school students that other programs can do too. I want to clarify, we want a big market of people doing this. And we want to create governors of conditions for teachers to gain waivers to teach those courses, to be allowed to teach those courses with this summer immersion and by doing it. And if we can handle those supply problems, the other thing we have to do is end the stupidity, as you were saying, Governor Cox, of separating career learning from general learning. That's why I want to do it with AP, because it should be for everybody. All parents, I can tell you, including parents of college-going students, would rather they learned valuable, concrete skills that could get them a job. So why have we segregated these two fields? We need your help as governors breaking through these structures and moving to scale quickly. In healthcare, it's 25% of the economy, like duh. Kids, it is the top. I ask often audiences, what's the main thing kids want to be when they grow up? And they say media influencer or something unrealistic. No, they want to be nurses. But what do we give them in high school? We give them chemistry, physics, and biology, abstract and separate. Why don't we give them anatomy and physiology for a 2-year course infused with the chemistry of the body?
Well, one more though. I mean, why don't we? And we do, but we should do it more. Why aren't they, when they graduate high school, have EMT certification or phlebotomy certification or nurse assistant certification, all of which can vertically stack if they want to go into nursing, but if they don't like school or want to go on, they have a skill today.
You're exactly right. And I should be careful because such courses can exist, but what they lack is certifications of consequence at scale, and hence they don't get the return for taking the course. I want to be rather blunt with you. Kids strive in AP not because they are virtuous, because they have something to gain, which is college credit. And that's what we're trying to do in these career courses, is make very clear things they're striving for. So it's not like an anatomy course to learn it or because you're interested, but precisely that. A 2-year applied biology sequence, which gets to a nurse assistant credential, and then a 2-year because anatomy and physiology, you may know, is a huge screening course that sorts out kids who want to be nurses from actually becoming them. So by giving them a successful credential in anatomy and physiology, you open up a great deal more.
All right, let's open it up. Any comments, or Governor Cox, anything?
Sure.
Yep.
I have lots of things, and I don't want to take too much time, David. I want to thank you for this discussion. So I had a conversation with the university president that kind of broke my brain at first, but has unlocked some things. There is what we call the Pathways program. The predominant church, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints in Utah, through their university systems, has started this Pathways program across the world. It's for college. And they did something that was very unique. And this, I promise I'm getting somewhere, but they flipped the way we do college generally. Instead of doing your general education first, they put it last. You do the thing you're interested in first, and then you take your general eds after that. That led to a non-church related university president who says, I think we've got this backwards. I need to give every freshman coming into my university a real life experience with the thing they're interested in. So this work-based learning. And then we can do all the other stuff on the end once they've discovered the love of what they're doing. And it sounds to me that's exactly what you're talking about. If you know, to the nurse example, if you give a kid a real life experience with nursing or EMTs, emergency services, whatever that is, they're going to enjoy biology and chemistry on the back end once they've discovered that love. If you give them biology and chemistry on the front end, they're out, right? So am I picturing this right? Is that where
You've got it
we're
perfectly.
going?
And to even go structurally like one step further, high schools are racing to get kids' graduation requirements done. So if we bet on electives for career readiness, forget it. Because kids take like one. So it's a totally scarce good. Whereas if you replace 10th grade English with a seminar in which students are exploring their interests in 10th grade, it is a launching pad for them to. So everything we're doing, surprisingly maybe for the College Board, is actually focused on 10th grade, earlier in the high school, but fulfilling a requirement. I want to be super clear. We have to refurbish the core. So maybe to say something a bit radical, maybe for some set of kids, taking biology and chemistry separate is much less interesting and valuable than taking an anatomy and physiology course that blends the two in super powerful ways. Because what makes anatomy and physiology hard, as you know super well, is it's infused with chemistry and electricity, and that's why it's complicated. So we've got to break out of, you gotta get this stuff all done in this way and enliven the core learning. If we've got a requirement in computer science, honestly, I would insist they get a useful credential from that. Otherwise, why are we doing it? If they're getting a year or a course in personal finance, why aren't we having a course that empowers them to use that knowledge to get a job? And so I think it's insisting that we go from this requirements-heavy system to insisting on credentials, if that makes sense.
So we're in Utah, we'll have a bill this year that we're running. We're calling the First Credential for All, and that is we want every student graduating with a credential. And I think getting to the credential piece is so critical, and I'm glad to hear you're thinking that way. And I'll be quiet now and can open it up. Thanks.
Yeah.
Turn this on.
Go ahead. Please
Hi,
turn the
Sari
microphone on.
Factor with Imagine Learning. There is still a cultural stigma about career and technical education. And how, David, do you think we break out of that? It's not the academic track, pre-college track, and CTE track. It has to be completely reinvented.
I think Sari, who, by the way, I admire to a fault. Sari's one of the most effective education executives I've ever met in my life. For like 20 years, I've admired her from afar and close by. Sari, I think I want to lean into all the snobbery associated with my institution to shatter these walls. I am very deliberately transforming AP to mean the best of excellent work that we should all strive for includes this work. So I'll give you a funny example. What is one skill set that makes you a lot of money even if you don't go to college? Now, one of it is cybersecurity, which is the only reason I started there. Some of our best cybersecurity professionals at the College Board happen not to go to college because it's a...
Let me just add, so you said you had 34 in Colorado. I think I visited the school where at least half of them come from, but it's Bowman Tech in Adams 12 district. Somebody from your organization was there. So high schoolers, and many of them are first generation, it's kind of a low middle income area. when they graduate with the 2 credentials, and you do 2 different credentials, they can get jobs of over $80,000 a year. And some go into the military and go to intelligence, some go to college, some go directly to jobs that are in the, $84,000 a year right out of high school.
And so if the governor's okay with it, what I want to do is do cross-state credentials, if that's cool, because we can't go through all your state IRC, that will die. We'll be here 15 years from now. So cyber isn't different. Like, if we can make multi-state credentials quickly. But sorry, to your point of honoring it, let me give you an example of something that makes a lot of money, that may not require as much formal education, that we dare not honor, which is sales. I can't wait to do AP sales and marketing with a focus on selling. And what we're looking at actually is companies that have these intensive sales training that really make you more effective.
Sales is a great living,
It really is.
And there's really no credentialing that
Isn't
leads
it?
to it. I mean, the
Isn't
candidate,
that
it's kind
startling?
of the interview, and the candidate needs to sell
Exactly.
themselves, because if they can sell themselves, they can sell anything. But college means nothing. I mean, nothing means nothing.
And the
Yeah.
academy only does marketing, as you know, Sarah, because they're comfortable with the numbers part, but very little with the interrelational part. So I think we have a chance in this new career focus, but only if we don't play the game. It can't be just for the career tech kids, it has to be for both. I want to lay down some rules as to how we work in it, if we can. What do you think? Do you have a better idea? I'd love your advice.
I think it's great. And I think I would say to the governors and their education staff who are in the room, how do we break out of the state standards? I find that, the state standards are diverging more and more and more and getting more and more specific, yet the jobs are
Well, so 2 things on that. I mean, the state
National,
are
right?
academic standards. They're not exactly skills or career readiness standards. They're well, you could use the word just academic standards, or you could use this word, they're academic standards. They are, if anything, designed to be college ready as opposed to career ready, but they don't particularly do a good job of that, because clearly everybody who gets a diploma is not ready for college when you need remediation. So they portend to be college readiness standards, but either they're not or people aren't reaching them. But the other thing is, though, as you do this, even the skills that you need are going to be different across different economies. So, I mean, earlier we were talking about the New York Workforce Council. I think it was Richmond was talking about that. But I mean, we're hiring for maybe aerospace and cybersecurity more in Colorado. It might be more for a different field if it's in Detroit or if it's in another area. It doesn't mean kids shouldn't have access to everything. They might want to move. They might want to go in a different field. But we do have to have the discussion around kind of what are the great jobs in our area and how do we prepare people for them as well.
I also am curious about assessing the skills that are not the purely academic skills of can you multiply fractions, the critical thinking,
Yeah,
the
no.
collaboration you described.
You'd be intrigued, Sarah, like something a lot of people don't know about the College Board is we are by far the largest provider of project-based assessment. In our seminar course, we evaluate collaboration, presenting findings, and a whole set of, dare I say, soft skills that are incredibly valuable. One reason I'm obsessed with the AP selling opportunity is it turns a soft skill into money. It makes concrete the enormous power of influencing people, as does politics or any other act where you can count how many votes or what you get. So I think, Sarah, this is the work we're transforming our assessment models to give rigor, because part of what's happened here, if you don't mind me saying so, is if kids are taking courses without any assessment track record, then we can't certify to employers that if you give them this apprenticeship, they know something going into it. So the idea is that we can say to businesses, not we know how to use this product or that product, because that will be too various. That will always fail. But if we say to banks and financial institutions writ large, if you want to hire someone on the front end, they should understand the financial needs of businesses and consumers, because those are your clients. There are 2 projects in the business and personal finance course. In one, you make a business plan. And in the second, you are a financial advisor to a family who is similar or different from your own. Those experiences are materially valuable and express a range of competencies of the sort you're describing. It's that level that I think we can change things. Cybersecurity is a new liberal art. Everything must be secured. Whether it's every school district should have apprenticeships in cybersecurity. Their networks are being broken. At the College Board, we need such. I think all of the organizations here have divisions that are protecting now. So I think there are a few things that are ubiquitous and powerful that we could tap into.
Is this under the brand AP, or is it a different brand, or what is the branding for
Yes,
this?
sir. It's under the brand AP, which was a hard decision, but one I insisted on, to be frank. Because I would rather threaten our brand as an elite exclusive brand to honor the work that these young people are doing and a much wider set of students doing it. My biggest fear is that it would exclude certain kids from trying. So what we're working on is making sure that these courses offer as broad an invitation as possible, and that's everything we're doing. The seminar course and all these more lively courses, we're bringing in all rather than some, a much broader set of students. We are just designating them as career kickstart courses. What that means is, in a subset of AP courses, you will not only get, you will always get a college credit. I feel fiercely about this. Whether or not they're going to go to college, it will always speed it up if they choose to later. And number two, you'll get an employer certificate that employers value. Very simply, whether it's for apprenticeships or others, we'll have that dual guarantee in those courses.
Yeah, it's interesting because the way that until I realized all the interesting stuff you're doing, we kind of always talked about AP as more of the elite model that was there, and we were kind of work around it to do a lot more dual and concurrent enrollment, which we are, and we're very excited, align courses to our community colleges, and they're much more egalitarian and offered. And,
Exactly.
And to a certain extent, AP is still kind of coming down from their perch there, where they're at our more elite high schools, and they're more of the upper income and college-age parents, kids who take it. And but I think you're going to try to, which is good. We all want competition. You're going to say we're going head on, not necessarily against dual and concurrent enrollment, but I mean you're in that same sector. So I mean, yeah, you can work with your community college, or you can work with AP. And there might be advantages for the school in working with both. For instance, in the working with community colleges, they often require a more full dual accreditation, which also often involves having to have, for instance, a master's degree in that content area. Don't know if you do, but I assume you don't. You probably require something of your teachers, but it probably doesn't necessarily mean they have a master's degree.
No,
so you can credential
we
them a little
certify them
easier.
for the course,
which is
rather than broadly.
Which is great for teachers, right?
It's great because
Yeah.
it makes the profession fluid.
Because we have a real problem, especially in rural schools, but in many schools, where
Exactly.
there's not enough faculty that are dually credentialed.
I'll tell you a couple of really interesting dual enrollment things that may surprise folks. First of all, our lead
By the way,
partners.
they don't need a full master's in that, but they need a certain number of hours in that content area, which is still pretty onerous. Yeah.
Forget it. If you have any such requirement before people can start teaching these new courses and new skills, you'll never get to scale. So I just think we need a clear.
Yeah, and we view it as additive, by the way. We're not against, we're all for those other things too.
No,
But
just to say, I'm
it's
not
great,
saying get
yeah.
rid of it. I'm saying it's a
So-
deeper expertise.
So how many new
But-
things are
but
you
just-
rolling out? Like numerically, you can answer that one first, but I'm curious, like, what's kind of the plan, and what are some of them you're working on?
If you
over
see
the next
some
few years?
haggard colleagues of mine, we used to launch an AP course about once every 5 years or so at best. We're launching 5 in the next 5 years, just to give you a sense. We're also going back to existing AP courses like computer science principles, and we'll be adding a data science credential and an AI credential to those courses. I think that we need to rethink the whole thing. The seminar course, if businesses want soft skills, will they endorse it? But just one word for fairness. Our closest partners are community colleges. I'll tell you what everyone gets wrong. AP's competitor is not dual enrollment. Our problem is the middle of kids, this 25 to 70, 50% of the kids in the high school who do none of them. Dual credit, the problem is it didn't solve the problem the way we all hoped, that AP would be here. We're actually treating the same kids who are getting all the opportunities. It's tragic. We need to get at the middle who are bored. And in dual enrollment, overwhelmingly, it's not an applied field like cybersecurity. Those have not gone to scale. The community colleges want our cyber course. They want the business course because then they can further train those students. By giving credit, they build pipelines. So I have a whole new idea about the only thing I think the dual enrollment space has to figure out is assessment. There has to be a way we prove that students know certain things if employers are going to come on at scale.
I think the answer would be, I don't know if there's anybody here for the community college system, but they do, not that they do it perfectly, they do it the same way they do it at community college.
Right.
Meaning they have, their accreditation effectively, and they convey that accreditation to instruction at the high school level.
I personally think that I know I may sound strange, I want to transform enrollments at community colleges. Our community college members are in jeopardy. There are a lot of kids who could be going there after high school who are not. I think by building these broad-based courses, we could help transform their recruitment efforts. I think there's like a huge win-win.
Let's open it up. Yes, Melody, and then we'll go to Michael.
Maybe answer this question, David, but I just love this new vision. But typically it's kind of what you said, where it's the same group. There's a gap in funding, perhaps. How are you going to reach that middle group that so desperately need this? And then you talked about the teachers teaching. I know we did an online model in my state that worked out pretty well, but how are you addressing that? Because so many schools can't have faculty. I mean, our smaller schools, you probably need this the most.
Yeah.
Our
I've been
deserts
kind
for
of
that.
praying over this, Melody.
Yeah.
We've made a strategic decision to leverage the reserve we've built over these years to invest in teachers. So I want to put it very bluntly. I do not believe in pure virtual. I think you need a teacher who is informed, who can then use the online resources and virtual resources skillfully because they bring kids along and recruit them. So we are going to commit that states that really want to work with us, we will waive the professional development investment. The College Board will make the investment in bringing teachers together and engaging them in that kind of intensive summer training and the supporting resources they need, including at the smallest schools. I just think it has to be, and I think that that kind of idea of we could be training, engaging teachers in these course-specific trainings at tens of thousands large, but the courses have to be relevant to rural America. We're even thinking of adding agricultural science if you're interested. We're very interested in what it would take to a set of courses that are not just for a few rural students, but widely taken. Melody, is that an answer to your question? You look thoughtful.
I'm just thinking about some places that are really, really remote where you might have,
We might do
how do
group
you
things.
decide, like, what's the one, you're not going to be able to offer this plethora of opportunities that I want all those kids to have that opportunity.
I'll tell you how I'm thinking
That's
about
how
it.
you
but
do it.
I love the challenge, and those of you who are skilled in rural America, please help us, because we're weak here. But if it fulfills a requirement, like 10th grade English or a computer science requirement, that is something that isn't so specialized. See what I'm trying to do? By dealing with required courses rather than electives, I'm trying to even go where rural schools have.
So I want to go to Michael in a moment, but I first want to go to, I want to give Martin a chance and any other sort of bona fide employers here, because not that, some of you in the education space employ people, but if your business is not in the education space and you're an employer, raise your hand. Are there others? Okay, so let's go to, are you back there as well, did you say? No, okay, so let's go to Deloitte, and I want to hear the employer reaction to this, because it's very important. We're talking about you, we want to talk with you, and then we'll go to Michael. Go ahead, Megan, Megan.
So obviously we're in the state local space, but we've had a long history consulting with employers. And what we heard from employers and actually built out a future of work practice and now a future of work institute is really to hone in on those human skills, because we have heard that you may have a credential, you may have a degree, but it really, can you empathize? Can you problem solve? Can you, resolve a conflict within a team? So we've built out some programming for that, certainly with employers, and now we're bringing it to higher ed. I think it's interesting to think about then how to employ that within K through 12, but I think you have to do it in a way where, for example, you said that sales and marketing, so you pulled in empathy. So how do you then measure if you are an empathetic person, for example? So to your point, Governor Polis, how do you measure some of those things that are, I don't know if we've all answered that yet, but that are truly measurable?
It's fascinating because we were so known as the stone cold, what you could see on the SAT, or we're not interested people. But in the seminar course, you're graded equally on things like collaboration. And there are all sorts of techniques of questioning and other things to see the effectiveness of the collaboration. You're graded as much on presentation as you are on the work itself. And so through project rubrics that are enforced through methods of training teachers and getting interrelated reliability, we're moving into these fields at a large scale. There's nothing perfect, but by making project-based work part of the 1 to 5 scale, not like a thing on the side, we're really forcing your questions of how can we say to employers, not only do they know the what of these things, but they've engaged in teamwork productively, they've engaged in problem-solving approaches to solve problems.
Martin, as an employer, what do you think of this conversation?
Well, it's wonderful because it's one part why we were actually motivated to do it. I want to say at Stadler, the community college does before they graduate, they do the normal tests. We do have one day, not only at Stadler, at the program, we have one day at the company, whereas there are experts coming in and you have to do practical work as well. So that does account to graduating with the system. 3 thoughts generally, because I think we really have a lot of work to be done in terms of cultural and how we work with the college. And then I believe also what the governor can add, or the states. First, I think we need role models, we need examples, and that's maybe there's associations and nonprofits, they can help with use this as a marketing tool, because we have to give examples like UBS. I don't know if you know UBS, but it's one of the largest banks in Switzerland. their CEO went through an apprenticeship program. There's plenty in the world, there's plenty of examples where they didn't go through the traditional college education and they were successful. Second, I think we have to stop to do and it's funny that I say that, we have to stop to do employer-specific programs. When we explain to the parents are an important stakeholder to this. When we explain to the parents that this is a great program, they want to see like, well, is my kid just stuck to Stadler afterwards, or does it actually have a value beyond Stadler? And so it's really important to not be too specific to employers, but really creating a job or a skills that a job needs. And then last but not least, it's kind of a wake-up call for maybe for the governor, or for cities, for mayors. I do believe most of the state hired or the local government hires are still based on what degrees they have. Yeah. And setting an example and hiring people with skills, or even the next part we want to do is try to get the city of Salt Lake City to join for an apprenticeship program, to actually honor that work and be an example.
So we have moved to skills-based hiring as a state, and in fact, we've challenged each of our state agencies to actually have apprentices as well. And we have several of our agencies that now have apprentices. But we have, there's some jobs that require, certainly if you're going to be an attorney for the state, you need to be an attorney. If you're going to be a CPA, you need to be a CPA. But we've moved to skills-based hiring. We no longer list college, and it's really opened up the doors on some great hiring for us, and we've been making that move over the last 2 years.
I think that's why you're one of the states being successful in promoting the programs. And it's always a mix, Governor. It's not one or the other. I think it's the mix that makes really the result.
Yeah, I think there's about, 7 or 8 states now, including Utah, that have moved away from
Pennsylvania. Utah, Colorado.
There's a handful of us that have moved away. And I think it's really important, back to the earlier question about how do we get out of this mindset that if your kid doesn't get a bachelor's degree, there's something wrong with them. By the way, I do worry that pendulum's swinging a little too far to where no kid needs a bachelor's degree, which is also not great. That's my party's kind of headed that direction a little bit, so we need to be careful about that as well. But this is really interesting to me, how we understand the competencies, right? That's the part. We can say we're not going to hire based on degrees anymore, but we still need a way to figure out if you're actually competent. And that's where I think states, even though we've made that change, are struggling a little bit. And I know Rachel, I know WGU and some others are working in that space as well. But we need to find a way to make sure that we can measure the competency.
There are really dumb conversations in education that absorb a lot of energy in an exhausting way, and this college or career debate is so dumb. So dumb. I just have to say it out loud. That is why, I just throw a marker down. We will not offer a course to young people that does not offer simultaneously a college credit and at the same time a workplace credential, because they should make choices later in life. It is to your point about generality and stackability too. That is nothing so specific that it wears away, but always like a step forward. Like you've taken the first step of a cyber program and you might do others. You might go into full-scale engineering. But I think there are, if we're looking for solutions, ways of getting past the name calling to some really powerful simultaneous solutions. I really love what you said about the generality and the transferability. And I'd love your help in designing credentials that are bracingly useful, but not specific in ways that are not viable.
Michael?
Just a strange question in a different direction a little bit. I love the conversation about AP and certification in non-traditional areas. The AP, the EMT discussion, the engineering for math for engineer discussion. This is a role the governors can play in this, to be mindful that there's still state licensing requirements. And we have to, for EMTs or engineers or a host of other provisions, have to put, and I know Governor Cox, you've already done this in Utah. We have to create flexibility in the licensing mechanism so they can understand those certifications and the value of it so they don't have to repeat it later.
Absolutely. We've also separately but adjacently, and I think Utah has been as well, a number of states have been engaged in aggressive occupational licensing reform. Again, moving towards how do we make sure that people are, of course, qualified to practice what they do, but it doesn't mean they might have got the skills actually working, like, as opposed to having to go to a formal program. It is a detriment to the free market in many sectors. It's a protectionist sort of relic of guilds' self-interests that we have been working to deconstruct in our state, as well as between the states. We have compacts in this area. So that should all align with the work AP is doing. So we just have to say, by the way, and that could be, for some occupations, perhaps the culmination test could be recognized by the states as
Right.
the requisite for the licensing. So
Right.
that would be a good tie-in that could reduce paperwork and bureaucracy.
We've already got two, so.
Yes, Jason.
Having just spent $100,000 for my daughter to get her degree from UC Santa Barbara in marketing and poli sci, and now she's taking online classes for being paralegal. I love this type of stuff. My question, I guess, is there a role for local districts to play? An example I'll give you is Madera Unified, one of our partners at Khan Academy, a very rural district, Central Valley, California, 90+% Hispanic. Great graduation rate. Not a lot of those kids are going to college, and they have huge job shortages in their local businesses, right? I'm going to butcher this, but it's like aviation, agriculture, manufacturing. So what did? They opened up a middle school, which allows all those kids to cycle through basically like a segment of those courses, right? So it's not like they're abandoning those kids graduating and going to college, but the reality is a lot of those kids are going to stay home, but they're meeting the needs of the local workforce, right? So how do we make sure we're meeting the needs of those local economies? Because that's very different from, say, Berlin, where I'm at. Those aren't the same job skills or
I'll tell you how I'm thinking about it. It's not perfect. We will never be perfect at providing the great in-depth aviation course versus the great in-depth advanced manufacturing course. But if there's a highly flexible, great business/personal finance course that you can pick your project, you pick the kind of company you want to start or build upon, you're picking what kind of advisor you are to what kind of family. The hunger for business education in the Latino community is stronger than any other area because, frankly, the desire is not just to be the workers, but to be the jefe, to rise. And so if we can tap into that, and then kids can flexibly adjust in their project work and other elements of the course around them to make it relevant. But there is no one who should pursue a career in aviation or any of these careers who should not, of course, command what it is to run a business. Otherwise, they only have the aspiration of fitting into it and never shaping. So
Great.
that's where I think we'll do our best.
We just have a couple of minutes, last comment, and then we have some instructions on how to get to the Dome, I think. But any other comments? Well, we're very excited to see this innovation, David, and I think it does tie into some of the work we're doing, whether it's occupational licensing, whether it's dual concurrent enrollment. Really great to see this work and look forward to continuing to working with you and College Board.
And not to flatter, but I've been so impressed with your team's focus on data and numbers, and we just need better numbers that matter for kids, like how many useful credentials they get. And also, I hope in my ambition, I've been adequately humble. We're going to learn from a lot of people in this room as to how to do this really well. We're relatively new to it, but I just hope we can work together to shatter some of these structures as we start so that we don't play small ball again. That's what I'm asking all of your help with, and help us get better to avoid that.